All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed your break, and we're ready for the second panel of the afternoon. The second panel of the afternoon is under the title Art and Identity. And I'm just going to very briefly introduce the moderator for the afternoon. Marianne Milford Lutzker is Professor of Asian Art History and holds the Carver Chair in East Asian Studies, and is the chair of the Department of Art and Art History at Mills College. She's a graduate of the PhD program here at UC Berkeley, and we're pleased to invite her up to moderate this afternoon's program. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the Korean group here at Berkeley for inviting us to participate in this symposium. I'm at Mills College, and I've been involved with the exhibition In Between Places, which has been curated by Inson Linda Choi and also by H.J. Kim Han, Hyungjong Kim Han, who is the Associate Curator of Korean Art at the Asian Art Museum. And we've also been working with our director, Stephanie Hayner, and it's been a really inspiring experience working with the artists. We actually started out with 9 artists, and now we landed up with 8 artists. Living artists is so different. My own background originally was in archaeology and Sanskritic studies in actually South Asia, and their stones don't talk back to you. You dig in the ground and that's fine. But here, when you're working with living artists, it's always a situation of accommodating, of communicating, and compromise. And it's been really wonderful. It's a beautiful exhibition, and I hope that all of you will have an opportunity to see it. I found the first half of this afternoon's symposium to be very moving. I'm also an immigrant, came under very different circumstances. However, a lot speaks to me as an immigrant as well. Yes, I do speak English, but still, one's always an outsider. One can never be right inside. And so a lot that Inson and HJ have addressed in the exhibition, I found applies to many of us from all different backgrounds and ethnicities. And it's very profound. And I found the 3 papers or presentations that were given just earlier before the break really moving. Just hearing about the experiences of the early immigrants coming over. I had no idea that the time before Angel Island or anything like that. And I think this is where Korea has been sort of overlooked a lot, because yes, the focus has been primarily on, especially here, Angel Island, the Chinese, and then the Japanese. And so it was really interesting to hear another part of this story. And I found the poetry and the writing really beautiful as well, very, very moving. So I want to introduce, that's enough about me and Mills, and I want to introduce now our speakers. First of all, we have Inson Linda Choi, whom I've known for many years now, actually, a long time. Linda was actually one of my students, both at the Asian Art Museum during the sort of docent program. I think that's how we first met, and then as an undergraduate. And then after Mills, she went on to do graduate work at San Jose State and did her work in contemporary, I think it was like Asian American, Korean American art, and did a wonderful exhibition on her thesis, and that was held down in a museum down in Silicon Valley. And then after that, she went to the Asian Art Museum and was an associate or assistant curator there for many years, and then became an independent curator. And it was at that time that we worked together I was actually provost at the time, and we came up, and I was acting director of the museum too, all of these hats that we were wearing. And Inson came up to me with this wonderful idea of an exhibition focusing on women activist artists from Korea. And so we did this exhibition called The Offering Table. It was amazing. Installation was beautifully done, but it was a very moving experience of the women artists who have stood up to a very patriarchal, very conservative community, a lot of their art being destroyed, very strong women. And the installation was so moving, we actually had people burst into tears and crying over it. I mean, I was thinking of the pillows in particular. I'm still looking at Inson right now. So we've had a wonderful time working together. You've done many other exhibitions, and now we have Dwelling, or the In-Between Places, which addresses essentially the identity and the search for identity and who are we all, in very meaningful ways. The other thing about the exhibition, which I really love, is the intergenerational artists. We've got artists who are in their 20s, and we've got artists in their 70s. So we're seeing the whole sort of span. But one thing has struck me about, well, I'm at Mills, a women's college, and so our undergraduate work students are all women, and our graduate students are 50-50. But I was also struck by the fact that the panelists in the first group were all women, and we've only got one male artist in the exhibition, and maybe Inson, you might sort of talk to that. Also, we did the activist artists were women artists as well, and I think some of the strongest artists today in Korea are women artists. And I think that's saying a lot for the situation of women in particular. So the two artists who are going to speak with us today, Jungran Bae and Minji Son, are two artists here in the Bay Area, and I'm just going to introduce you just alphabetically by your last name. So Jungran Bae was born in Seoul, and when she came, well, actually trained as a writer, and thought she was going to be a writer until she came to this country. And then she started experimenting with art and went to the California College of the Arts and investigated ceramics and became a superb ceramicist. As some of you may be familiar with her work, there's a certain sort of sense of whimsy about it, but it also addresses the situation of sort of women too. The first time I saw her art was an installation of this crazy accumulation of cups and saucers, all at strange angles, and it was quite humorous in a way, but also addressing more serious sort of circumstances that surround women, women's work, women's environment as well. And she continues with that, with her installation at Mills right now, in how she portrays women with books on their head. Women learn. Women are not just confined to the domestic situation, or if they are, they can still think, which I think is really important. And then the other artist, Minji Son, she's a performance artist who has a very rich background. She was actually born in Japan and then raised in Korea and then in Canada, and now she is in the Bay Area. She received her BFA from the Art Institute of Chicago, one of the truly outstanding art institutions in the United States. Then came to California and got her MFA also at the California College of the Arts. I loved her work when I first saw it at the Chinese Culture Center. You were doing a performance, and it was you were seated and just writing. And when the pile of papers, you would write something on paper and put it down, write and paste. And you were just sitting there. And then there was, trash, what's it? Shredder, said something, the shredder there. And so when the pile grew so big, then you would just shred them. And you were sitting in this big room, completely filled with all the shreds and all the paper. And I mean, it's interesting because you bring attention to the mundane things in life, the repetitive things we do. Sometimes one becomes absolutely obsessive about things, and one doesn't realize it, and you sort of bring attention to that in a very sort of aesthetic way. And it sort of makes me very conscious every time I shred a piece of paper. Why do we shred things? We're so frightened in case our names are on it, our social security numbers are on it, our privacy is being invaded. These were things that didn't worry us 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But now we are sort of overwhelmed by that. And so I think also, your installation too, turn right, turn left, turn right. What am I? Am I Korean? Am I American? Up, down, left. And it's quite sort of bewildering in a way. And I don't know how you could stand up after your performance at the opening. You must have been so dizzy. So anyway, very obsessive, very repetitive, and also very ordinary as well. So with that, I would like to invite you. Let's see. Shall we start with Linda? Insom. Okay.
I would like to first thank everyone from the Center for Korean Studies at Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, especially Stephanie Kim as she's walking out the door, and Laura Nelson and Diane Cho, who I think brought us together at first, and Mills College Art Museum, Stephanie Hayner and Jana, who is not here, for their efforts in organizing this symposium and the exhibition. This exhibition and this symposium highlight the transnational experiences of Korean Americans in the Bay Area. And I say Bay Area because most of the artists had resided in the Bay Area when we first began planning this show. But at least two of the youngest artists have become kind of migratory. And I think that's how the young people live these days. They're very nomadic and they adapt almost anywhere. I would like to say a special thanks to Hyunjung Kim Han, who, as my cohort, as a co-curator in this exhibition, made it really meaningful and worthwhile. And it really brought a lot of happiness and joy to me. The exhibition In Between Places validates the sentiments of millions who migrate and relocate to a million unfamiliar places, past and present. By that, I mean to say that for whatever reasons, people leave one place of familiarity and become a transplant in a different world. There's that trans word again. I think we all kind of use that a lot. In Between Places attempts to connect the experiences of a greater audience through visual media. This is the story of America, about immigrants whose life was almost always defined by struggles, especially for the earlier generations of Koreans. And I'm especially really proud of the fact that we have multi-generations in this exhibition. Being in a strange, unfamiliar place presents huge disabilities, not unlike suddenly becoming blind and mute, having to relearn basic survival skills. And I was talking to Youngmi, and I think that comes from my own experience, having been transplanted here when I was 14 and with no English background at all. I didn't even know how to say hello. And so I literally felt like I became deaf and mute, basically. The process of assimilation is gradual and eventually becomes part of the collective history of all who traveled similar paths. These are artists in the show, and that is Hyunjang and I, 인증샷, or like taking a evidence picture. This exhibition documents 8 Korean American artists' experiences and their perceptions. For some of the artists in this exhibition, it was an emotional journey of how they lived, about their identity and what being in America represented for them.